We're thrilled to have with us Sana Khareghani. Sana graduated from MIT and has over 20 years experience in technology and business across the private and the public sectors. As the head of the Office for AI, we're delighted to have her with us to tell us about the key role the Office for AI plays in the UK, especially in getting the upcoming AI strategy out. And also she's going to tell us about how you can get involved. Over to you, Sana.
Thank you, Adrian. Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for having me here. It's been an incredible first day, and I'm really looking forward to the second day of the programming. I just wanted to start off by what you just mentioned. Yesterday, some of you will have heard Tabitha Goldstaff, who's the chair of the AI Council, on the roadmap, which was an independent advice to government on how the UK builds on the great work that we started a few years ago with the AI sector deal. The big competitors are obviously China and the US, but there are a number of other countries who are really pressing ahead with their AI journey and ambition. And the council really wants to make sure that we remain in that leadership group. So the primary recommendation from the roadmap, as Adrian also alluded to, was to write a national AI strategy. Obviously, they also recommended that we should not only double down on the foundations that we've been working on in terms of access to skills, talent, data, etc., but also to remain adaptable and take into consideration 16 recommendations that they've made. So a couple of weeks ago, the Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport announced that the government was indeed going to develop this national AI strategy, and we'd be publishing it later this year. And my team in the Office for AI are leading on writing that strategy. And we have been very busy engaging and collating evidence from stakeholders to do that. And I will mention at the end of my little chat about how you can get involved, because we're very keen to hear from you. But before I get there, I thought it might be useful to give all the viewers a bit of a quick history of where we've come from and what the different institutions that exist in the landscape all do, because I know that there is generally some confusion about who does what and how we all work together. But I can assure you it is done seamlessly. So in 2017, we had an independent review into AI that was led by Dame Wendy Hall and Jerome Pesenti. And this review focused on how to grow the AI industry in the UK, recognizing this is an area that the UK is good at and has a history of pioneering. In 2018, we announced the sector deal, which was a near £1 billion package of support from government and industry to help grow the AI ecosystem and bolster the partnership between government, business, and academia. And the government also established 3 bodies to deliver this ambition. One is the Office for AI, which I lead, whose mission is to drive responsible and innovative uptake of AI technologies for the benefit of everyone in the UK. The other is the UK's AI Council, which is an expert committee of independent members from industry, academia, and civil society that provide advice across government on AI, but also are a conduit between the AI ecosystem and the government, really a two-way loudspeaker, if you will. And finally is the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation. And I believe you sit on the board of that, Adrian, which is an independent advisory body set up to investigate and advise the government on how to maximize the benefits of AI and data-driven technologies whilst being aware of the risks involved. Oh, I'm going to talk a lot more today about the Office for AI because that's my area of expertise and what I've been doing over the last few years. We have really been concentrating on 5 main priority areas. That's leadership in society, skills and talent, access to data, supporting adoption and diffusion, and international engagement. So we've been incredibly busy, but I want to touch on a few things just to kind of give you a flavor of the kind of work that we've been doing. I'll start off with skills and talent. We've worked with colleagues from UKRI, Institute of Coding, and Office for Students to increase the number of PhDs in the system through introducing 16 new centres for doctoral training across the UK. We've worked with industry and Institute for Coding to put in place more than 100 industry-funded master's students into the system. We've introduced recently 2,500 conversion courses at master's level for students from non-STEM backgrounds, and 1,000 scholarships for people from underrepresented groups. A quick aside on statistics there, these courses started in September amidst the pandemic, and 22% of the students, of the total students that were taken in, were awarded scholarships. Of these, 76% of the scholarships were women, nearly half were Black, and a quarter were disabled. And this is the first program that we've put in as a government to start to address the diversity and inclusion gap that exists in this area of study. We've obviously also worked with you, Adrian, and the Turing, as well as UKRI, to put in the place the Turing AI Fellowships, which include a recent batch of acceleration fellows who benefit from £20 million of funding. These fellows are really designed to attract the best and brightest to work and remain here in the UK. On data, we worked with the Open Data Institute to pilot a very early phase of data trust to encourage data sharing between organizations. The report was published in 2019. Since then, the ODI have continued their work on data institutions, looking in particular with the NHS and action against age-related macular degeneration at sharing retinal scans to improve diagnosis. And recently, the AI Council has been working with the Ada Lovelace Institute on legal mechanisms for data sharing. And we know that organizations like the Food Standards Agency are also looking at trust frameworks to encourage better data sharing to solve all manner of challenges in food supply chains. On the international side, we have established a number of memorandum of understanding with countries abroad, and we are founding members of the Global Partnership on AI, which is either referred to as GPAI or GPI. I think the jury's still out on which one of those is going to land, but I think I'm on the GPAI ship, but we'll see. This is really the first intergovernmental initiative with a permanent focus on cooperation for AI's governance and development. So far, it includes 19 governments, which is 18 countries and the EU, and represents roughly around 30% of the world's population. And it is still growing. So GPAI is really about international collaboration. It's about pooling the greatest minds together from across the world to collaborate, to cooperate, and to solve the world's greatest challenges, like the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These are the challenges that affect all of us, and these technologies and working together is really going to help us find solutions in the best and quickest way possible. Closer to home, we have been working to drive uptake and adoption of AI. Two good examples of the work that we have specifically done in this area are the Public Sector AI Guide and our guidelines for AI procurement. The Public Sector Guide, we worked with colleagues across government to identify and share best practice on AI in the public sector. We also worked with Alan Turing Institute on part of this, covering safety and ethics. On the guidelines for AI procurement, we worked with the World Economic Forum in San Francisco on a framework for responsible public sector procurement of AI. The work was actually international, and it led to something called AI Procurement in a Box, which is a set of tools that governments internationally can use to develop their own procurement frameworks. In the UK, we used it to create guidelines for AI procurement, which were then operationalized through our Crown Commercial Services through their AI marketplace dynamic purchasing system. And this system allows smaller innovative companies to offer their services to government departments whilst following the ethical principles and thinking through the guidelines that we have set. The public sector is 40% of the economy in the UK. So actually making sure that we've got the right set of standards and are asking the right questions and thinking about the right ethical principles is really important as a signal to the rest of the economy. if we look a little bit wider to adoption across the economy, there are a couple of areas that I just wanted to mention. One is that businesses that are innovating like certainty. So it's important that sector regulators have the right level of comprehension and AI literacy to be able to put forward clear positions on AI, which is why it's great that the Alan Turing Institute, again, is working with the Office for AI and the Center for Data Ethics and Innovation, as well as regulators, to identify areas where regulators can upskill and ensure that they're collectively moving forward with the changes in these technologies. The second is something we started off this conversation with, which is how important it is for us in government to hear from people across the entire ecosystem, whether they are researching, developing, working, or living with artificial intelligence technologies. The Council is the Office for AI and wider government's conduit into the AI ecosystem. We set it up so that we would have that insider perspective on tap. And right now we are actively listening to help develop the strategy. And so if you're interested, please do get involved. Drop us an email at info@officeforai.gov.uk. You can sign up to our newsletter if you just want to follow how the strategy is developing. But if you do email us, we can guide you into how you can get involved and express your views as well. I'll stop there now and hand back over to you, Adrian, and we can maybe have a chat across a few different areas.
Thank you so much, Sana, for that wonderful summary of just some of the great work that you're doing. And more broadly, thank you for your leadership in the space, for being a great friend and supporter to the Turing and to the wider AI community. You've raised a lot of really important themes, which I hope we'll have time to explore. Just to explain to everyone how the session is going to work is that Sana and I are going to have a bit of a fireside chat, but then we're going to try to bring in questions from anyone who's watching. So please do, if you're interested, post questions on Slido, and we'll try to get to those in 10 or 15 minutes or so. First thing I just wanted to emphasize was that last point that Sana made. Anyone who wants to contribute to these really important policy issues around the AI strategy, please do get in touch. And I think that email was info@office.ai. Is that right?
info@officeforai.gov.uk.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying. Excellent. So please do get in touch. I'm sure everyone's view is really, really important. So maybe I'll just start by asking a fairly broad question. We're fortunate, as you mentioned, to be one of the leading countries in the world in AI. What can we do to really maintain our position in that space?
I mean, that's an excellent question, right? And that was the central question that the Council asked themselves when they developed the roadmap. And what they came back with was 16 recommendations across a number of themes to help us ensure that we stay in that leadership group. And of course, they've also said, keep doing what you're doing and do all these new things. So, they haven't made it easy for us, really. But one of the things, there's a few areas that we've been looking at what are the areas that the UK has existing strengths and a legacy in. And one of those is really around R&D in research and development. And if we concentrate on research and development, it is one of the areas that we absolutely excel in. The UK boasts the highest number of top-rated centres for AI research of any nation, from Southampton University to Queen Mary University of London to the University of Sheffield, Edinburgh University, to name a few. We have the Alan Turing Institute, which is our national centre for AI and data science. We have a number of these institutions that many countries don't have, and definitely don't have the same legacy that the UK has. Also, one of the most important areas for the Bayes Secretary of State is the innovation strategy, which is coming out later this year as well. And this is about how do we ensure to really double down on the innovative landscape that the UK has, but not only that, how do we ensure that we are using it and exploiting it and making sure that we build on it going forward. And I think, you know, another example of an institution that has been doing a lot of work in this is UKRI, obviously, and the clue is kind of in the name of that one. And they recently published a review called Transforming Our World with AI. This was published just last week, and it shows the level of commitment that government is currently making in terms of funding AI R&D. So they cite over £1 billion in their current AI portfolio, which includes £530 million in research and innovation projects and £410 million supporting key strategic investments such as the Hartree and Turing. And we know, for example, there are companies like DeepMind who are owned by Google but won't leave the UK, which we're very happy about. But I mean, that really demonstrates the access to talent that they get here and the world-class universities that we have. And so I think, you know, it is, from an R&D perspective, it's an area that we need to really double down on and ensure we continue building. R&D generally leads to innovation, and we need to build out that landscape going forward, from innovation to commercializations and getting products out into the landscape and building that public trust that allows us to really use AI to solve some of the challenges we face, whether it's productivity or climate and getting to net zero or whatever the priorities happen to be across the UK. And I think doing those kinds of things, so doubling down on our areas of strength, whilst paving the way for really making use through the adoption of these technologies, is how we're going to keep our leadership position.
That's very encouraging to hear. And as we think about potentially where some of this funding may come, particularly perhaps for the academics on the call, of course, UKRI is very important. We've also heard about ARIA, exciting new venture to support moonshot projects. As we think about all of this area, I wondered if I could turn to something which the other relevant Secretary of State, Oliver Dowden, mentioned in terms of the upcoming strategy. And I was really encouraged by this because of my particular interests. He mentioned that the AI strategy will focus on 3 areas, where the second one, which directly addresses the point you made about public trust, talks about ethical, safe, and trustworthy development of responsible AI. Can you speak a little bit about how important that is and why?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, this is one of the areas that really we turn to the Turing for advice, and specifically yourself, Adrian, in the work that you lead for Turing around kind of safe and ethical development of AI and making sure that from a technical perspective we get that right. So I think there's multiple facets to this, right? When we talk about why is ethical or why is values-driven AI, trustworthy AI, ethical, responsible development and deployment of AI important, right? At the heart of that is people, right? We want to make sure that we remain the masters and central to any kind of decisions that are being made, or any kind of help that's being provided is actually working for society. And in order to do that, there are a number of different areas that we need to look at and unpick, right? So there is obviously the technical aspect of that, which really does, which you are the expert on and can talk about. And one of the areas we've spoken about through funding into R&D and so on, that we hope will continue pushing that research into the technical aspects of responsible and ethical delivery and deployment of artificial intelligence solutions, that will continue to happen. There's a real question in there about diversity, about making sure that we allow more people to take part in the creation of the solutions and also the development of the solutions and so on. One of our AI skills champion, who's Dame Wendy Hall, she often says, if it isn't diverse, it isn't ethical. And this is also an area that's hugely important to me. And we need to address these issues, right? And I know that listeners or people who are listening have heard this a million times, but the problem is really bad, right? And ensuring that we open the doors and allow more diversity and is a huge challenge. Just some stats to kind of put this into view. And I know that Turing recently released a paper about where are the women, right? And I think that the stats are even worse than, the current stats are even worse than we thought previously. But in 2018-19, only 18% of computer science graduates in the UK were female. And it gets even worse when you think about ethnic minorities. So there was a study done in the US which showed that only 1.5% of technical roles in Facebook were Black people, and less than 1% are estimated on that were working on actual AI products. So how we are supposed to use artificial intelligence to solve problems when actually the people solving the problems don't represent society is a huge, huge question for me. And I've talked about the master's courses, but there's a huge, huge more amount of work that we need to do here to get this right. Making sure that we have the technical ability to do this and we're funding innovation, but that we have an inclusive conversation that involves society and that we have the open doors and ability to really change the conversation about these things, right? We need to continue talking about these technologies and the interdisciplinarity that is required, right? The magic happens when you crash AI into a real world problem or a real world scenario, right? And I think, for example, we're hosting COP26 here later this year, and this is a real chance to inspire the next generation on the role of these technologies and how they can go a long way into solving some of the challenges we're facing today that we couldn't do without kind of crunching the data and being able to see patterns that our minds wouldn't be able to show us without.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for emphasizing the key importance of diversity and of interdisciplinary work, and for all the great things you've done so far. It was really exciting to hear about the successes already with the conversion courses and all the other things you're doing. Of course, I think the good news is that everybody really wants to everybody really recognizes the key importance of involving all of society in the design, development, and deployment of these systems, because they are going to affect all of society. I think all of us also recognize that it can be challenging, and we're always trying to do better. So if people have specific ideas, I think we always want to try to learn good practice, what does work and what doesn't work. So if anyone wants to get in touch about any ideas, please, you can send them to Sana or to me. We always want to keep trying to do better.
Absolutely. Open call to action.
That's right. And do you think it's fair to think that while of course we in the UK will always want to be working with our friends and partners around the world, potentially we can play a bit of a leading role in this area of responsible AI and establishing the right kinds of governance?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think, as I said, the UK really leads in this area and has a legacy, right? So the work that we've done with some of the regulators and so the regulatory sandboxes and the innovation that we've taken in allowing innovation to happen in a safe space, the creation of the Center for Data Ethics and Innovation that was created 2 years ago at the same time as the Office for AI. I mean, the fact that we are so far ahead in terms of thinking what the next set of questions are and making sure that we're digesting them and looking at them. Looking at the centers for doctoral training that are the 16 that I mentioned that are across the UK, there are a number that are looking directly at answering these questions of accountability, security, thinking about how this becomes such an important part of everybody's day, right? Not just kind of a subset of society, but the whole of society. And recently, the government published the integrated review, which again talks about technology being in the center of kind of our future security, and how it's central to everything that goes on in the UK. So absolutely, I think that this is an area that not only we can lead in, but actually globally we're looked at to lead in. You know, where people look to us to see what is the UK doing, what position are they taking, how are they moving forward, and it is it's an area of massive strength for us, that, you know, not only do we understand and know that that's the case in government, but we want to make sure that we support organizations like yours, Adrian, that we're sitting in, virtually sitting in here today, to make sure that the collaboration across the country continues to happen to drive this forward even more, and make sure that we continue to speaking with a loud voice when it comes to governance, regulation, ethics, safety, standards. You know, we stay at the cusp of the conversations that are kind of driving these technologies forward.
Thank you, Sana. And thinking of these themes of society and security that you mentioned, and specifically what's going on at the moment with COVID, could you speak a little bit about how AI contributed to the COVID response and how it can support our economic recovery and future resilience?
Of course. So one of the things we've all seen through the COVID pandemic is the rapid increase in digitalization across the board. So you know, the fact that we're running, you know, seamlessly this massive conference right now through Zoom is not something that, at least there was no way that a year ago, and it was a year yesterday we started working from home. I remember canceling my trips to abroad and suggesting that I could dial in and speak at the conference if they were still going to. This is before they had cancelled them. I suggested, you know, I can dial in and speak at the conference virtually, and there was a big kind of no, that's okay, you know, we'll have you next time type of thing. But now, I mean, you know, this, alongside a number of other conferences and our everyday work, happens all virtually, and we've managed to do that for an entire year without collapsing. And I think that is a huge testament to kind of how far technology has come and how much it's been adopted. But if we talk about specifically AI and COVID, I want to turn to NHS, because I think it's a really good place for us to talk about and the effects of these technologies and on our fight against the pandemic. So the NHS COVID-19 data store has been providing decision makers with a clear picture of what's happening on the ground and where resources are needed. The data store, as with all the NHS technologies, are built around key principles of confidentiality, privacy, autonomy, and transparency. They produce dashboards, models, simulations to provide central government decision makers with a deeper set of information about the current and future coronavirus situation to help inform the response and make sure that we are making the right response at the right time. Another example is the NHSX's National COVID AI Chest Imaging Database, which is a centralized UK database to support better understanding of the virus and develop AI technology, which will help enable the best care for patients that are hospitalized with severe infection. So 84 hospitals have contributed over 30,000 images so far. It is one of the largest data collection exercises for medical imaging in the UK. So essentially, the need to move quickly has removed some of the barriers that existed previously. And that's really allowed us to kind of showcase in a real world life and death situation, how these technologies can help improve decision making through the use of data, dashboards designed to help cope with, you know, the second wave, etc. But also by looking at, you know, using imaging to help with kind of chest X-rays and things like that. One other example is outside of health, where the Turing and Greater London Authority collaborated to bring together large-scale data sets capturing mobility, transportation, traffic activity across the City of London to better understand kind of busyness and help inform interventions to increase footfall to businesses post-lockdown, for example. So these technologies have been used in a couple of different ways, or in many different ways, to help with the situation.
Thanks for mentioning all those great innovations. Would you agree, though, that still we can do better, and we need to work harder to try to ensure that more and higher quality data is available, of course, in an appropriately privacy-preserving fashion, to enable us to do a better job going forward?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. You know, the bottom line to this is that is access to data, and ensuring that the right data to the right level of clarity and availability is being shared appropriately, right? And we have the government has created the National Data Strategy, the consultation response, to which will be coming up very, very soon, which goes a long way in addressing how government is going to do this. And a lot of it sits within the government landscape itself, in how we share data, what the process for that is, and ensuring that we have the right level of skills across the civil service, but also the right leadership within the civil service to ensure that everybody understands the importance of getting data right to unlock innovation, right? And absolutely, I think what has happened in the last year has also, I think, moved the public's understanding of the role that data plays in decision making forward as well. Just the fact that, you know, on our daily updates around the pandemic, the PM or others show a whole bunch of charts, right? And I know that that's a very small thing, but it actually shows very quickly to everyone how important a role seeing these trends and maths actually play in everyday decision making. And just to kind of loop back to what we said previously, I think if we are going to change the conversation, we need to show how important it is, how important numbers are to kind of everything that we do. And you know, growing up, I used to hear lots of people who would say, you know, numbers aren't my thing. I don't do numbers. I'm in HR, or I don't do numbers. I'm in, you know, like I'm a geologist or whatever it was, or I'm in chemistry, you know. And it was just, for me, it just always seemed really funny that it is important to whatever we do. And so one of the things I do with my children is always show them why, which they don't find very fun, but I always bring why it is important, whatever we're doing, planting, gardening outside, to, you know, running and kicking a ball, how maths and numbers play a role in that. And I think that kind of education needs to start right from the beginning in order to be able to build up to where we are today, and be able to use numbers and be able to use data-driven technologies and artificial intelligence technologies to address real world problems in the best way possible without holding back.
Absolutely. So, such an important message for public literacy there. We just have a few minutes for some great questions we got from the audience. I'm going to turn to a question from Graham Copperwheat. How would you judge the uptake of AI so far in the UK? Is it still with early innovators, or are we well into the so-called early majority?
I don't think we've hit early majority yet, although it depends, right? I should answer, and it's the best answer to every question, by the way, is it depends, right? Because if we're talking about your pocket AI, then yeah, everybody has one of these, right? and we're using these technologies. Or if you're using, if you've got the internet at home and you're searching on Amazon or buying something, or if you've ever clicked on this show was recommended for you, then yeah, yes, you're all using artificial intelligence technologies. If we're talking about actual diffusion, the way that we think of it in terms of how it changes your business, your operating model, how it affects the way that you use data, how you use data, data-driven decision-making, and all of those kinds of things, we are still at the cusp of doing some of this. And there are a number of things that that government needs to do, but also industry needs to do to continue down this journey. Access to skills, access to data. We've covered access to compute and infrastructure, ensuring everyone has, there's widespread access to the internet and Wi-Fi. These all sit at the kind of bottom there, and then above that we have making sure that companies understand the ability. And like the risk reward profile, the investment required to make these decisions, ensuring that there's the innovation landscape and the kind of theoretical parts of this continue. So we're still at the cusp of this, but I can say that we've done a huge amount in the last 2.5 years. We are ahead on a number of very important areas, and overall, if you compare it to other countries in terms of adoption, the UK is amongst the leaders. I think it's really exciting, and it's an area that makes me smile. And I think the next few years are going to really make a big difference.
I know these are big questions. We're going to try to squeeze in 2 more. We can try to go through them quickly, although I know it's tempting to spend a long time on any of these. Next question is from Leah Hendrickson. There's a lot of talk about involving the public, which is great, but how can we approach the public given the current waves of populist or anti-expert sentiment?
We need to be as open as we possibly can, and we need to offer as many routes to input as we possibly can. And I used to work for Government Digital Service, and one of the things we talked about when we were when we were digitizing different services that government provides, like renewing your driver's license or getting your passport, we realized that we couldn't reach the whole of the public through 1 or 2 channels. You actually needed to use multiple channels to reach the public, and so we are looking at using those kinds of methods as well. So not only through kind of the route that I've offered today, but we're hoping to introduce others and also have a number of forum, like town halls and various things like that, to allow the public to speak. And I think, I hear your point around kind of experts, etc., but we highly encourage everyone to get involved, and we definitely listen when we are given advice.
Fantastic. So more transparency and more two-way engagement. Let's try and get this last question, and this question from Keith Walker. How does the Office for AI work with other government departments to maximize the awareness of AI uses and potential across all areas of society and government?
And that's an excellent question. And the Office for AI, as I mentioned, we look at kind of the diffusion of responsible AI across the economy, so both external to government and internal to government. So in terms of making sure that the government itself is using AI appropriately, but also offering better public services. One of the things we have done is the AI guidelines and the AI procurement guidelines. So those are 2 sets of things that we've done specifically for government's use of AI. And we work very closely with the Centre, which is the Cabinet Office and Government Digital Service, in looking more broadly across government's own use of AI and how that can be done in a systematic and appropriate way, and in a way that isn't just trying to be more productive, but actually trying to offer better public services. So for example, the Government Automation Task Force is coming out soon, if they haven't already. They will be publishing a set of principles on the steps required in order to automate a certain task within government services. And the Office for AI has been working directly with them in developing those and ensuring that the right level of expert advice is being fed in as they get developed and then deployed. So we are, we're in the center of those conversations.
Super. I think, unfortunately, we've run out of time here. Thank you to all the audience, and special thanks to Sana for joining us early in the morning and for all the work that you're doing. Finally, just remind people, if you want to be in touch, the email is info@officeofai.gov.uk.
Office for AI.
Sorry, Office for AI, the Office for AI, apologies, .gov.uk. Please do be in touch, please enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks so much again, Sana.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.